Hey guys, back again with part 2 of my PS1 collection video. So let's just keep it going right away here. So we were up to the M section, so we'll start with this game, which I found at Goodwill for probably $3. Marvel vs. Capcom. What's the subtitle? Clash of the Superheroes. Now this isn't that great of a port. It's actually the worst one. I believe this is on Dreamcast as well. It was either Dreamcast or Saturn. I'm pretty sure it was Dreamcast, and that version is actually better. This one doesn't allow you to tag in the other player that you choose, so it's basically 2-on-2 fighting only. I think there's missing frames of animation and such, but you know, it was $3 at Goodwill, so I decided to pick it up. Okay. Next up, very good game, MDK, Murder, Death, Kill, but this is a port of the PC version, which is actually a lot better than this version, although this still was really nice on the PS1. It does have really nice graphics for the time, fun gameplay. It's made by Shiny, the people that made Earthworm Jim. Yeah, it's just like big open areas, a lot of shooting, sniping, kind of comical storyline and characters, so it's pretty cool. I'd recommend it. It's a pretty original shooter. Alright, then we got this series, Medal of Honor, World War II shooter. So basically, I find this game very similar to GoldenEye. Just the way the shooting action is, you kind of like hold down a button to aim, and then it's like a bounding box type aiming, kind of like GoldenEye. The enemies have really cool hit reactions, kind of like GoldenEye, so if you shoot them in the arm or the leg or the stomach, have different reactions. So yeah, it's a pretty good game. I'd recommend it. It's cheap. And then I have the sequel as well, Medal of Honor, Underground. Oh my god, bro. You're playing as a girl. I think you're playing as a girl in this one. Wow, so inclusive. Okay, this game, kind of an action platformer, Medieval 2. Don't have the first game, but I found this at Goodwill, I believe. A while back, though. Pretty interesting, well-loved game. Okay. And then, of course, the classic Metal Gear Solid Greatest Hits version. And again, I had the normal edition back in the day, but had to replace the game. So yes, I have the Greatest Hits version. As you can see, it has, you know, the silver discs instead of white. But yeah, Metal Gear Solid, great stealth game, and probably one of the best in the series between this and Metal Gear Solid 3, I would say. And then I also have the expansion disc, Metal Gear Solid VR Missions. This was Metal Gear Solid Integral in Japan, I believe. So it's very similar. I think it's missing maybe one mode from the Japanese version. I can't remember which it was. It was either the picture-taking mode or something else, but I know it's missing something from the Japanese version. But yes, it's basically the VR missions, and then you can unlock playing as the ninja, which was cool at the time. So, yep. Alright, next up we have this game, Mission Impossible, which came out after the original N64 version. And this version is pretty cool. It adds a lot more voice acting to the game because the N64 was kind of limited space-wise. So yeah, the N64 version had voice acting, but it was very little. And this pretty much has voice acting for every line of dialogue. Only thing I don't like is they replaced the cutscenes with really grainy-looking pre-rendered FMVs, whereas the N64 version was like in-game cutscenes, which I think looked nicer. But it's a cool game. It's kind of a stealth, you know, spy game. It's loosely based on the original Tom Cruise movie, but it takes a lot of liberties with that. It's pretty interesting. I'd say it did a lot of things that Splinter Cell eventually did, but this did it first, so cool game. Here's one I found at Goodwill as well, Monster Rancher 2, and I believe it's kind of like a Pokemon type ripoff. I think you breed the monsters though. But yeah, I haven't really played this much, but it's by Tecmo, so people that did Ninja Gaiden. But yeah, I've not played this yet. I'm not too much interest, but I knew it was kind of a niche franchise, so I picked it up because I saw it at Goodwill. Okay, and then we have a pretty cool game that gets misunderstood a lot, I think, and that's Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero. So it's basically like a 2D Mortal Kombat game with digitized sprites, but it's an adventure game. This PS1 version has really cheesy live action full motion video for the storyline, something that the N64 version didn't have. It only had still pictures, so that's really hokey and entertaining. But I actually like the gameplay. I like that it's like digitized characters and 3D backgrounds. I always love that look in games. It is kind of tough to get used to, but once you do, I think it's a cool game. You can perform fatalities and stuff on all the enemies. It's just pretty fun. And it shows like how Sub-Zero originally faced off with Scorpion. So that's cool. Then I have this game as well, Mortal Kombat Trilogy on the PS1. And this is basically the last version of Mortal Kombat 3 that came out, but they combined a lot of characters from Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 into Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. So that's kind of interesting. This one's really glitchy though. If you play it on a PS2, I believe you can't watch the ending movies or the ending storyboards, whatever. So you have to play this on a PS1, and even when you play it on a PS1, it tends to freeze up randomly. So very glitchy. This one has more characters than the N64 version had. It has better animation as well, but it has bad load times as well. So if you play Shang Tsung, you get load times when you try to morph into another character, which you can mitigate a little bit by choosing only being able to morph into like the other player or just the ninja characters, I believe. That speeds it up a little. But yeah, the N64 version has it beat as far as load times, but this has the most characters, best animation. So pretty cool game. Just unfortunate that it was so glitchy. And this is an interesting game. One of the few basketball games I own. Let me get this title right. NBA Showtime, NBA on NBC. So you're like, okay, what's special about this? It's endorsed by Shaq. No, it's because it's made by Midway. So I believe, I forget which company it was. It was either Acclaim or someone else had gotten the rights to the NBA Jam name. So the people that originally made NBA Jam went on to make this game. So this is kind of the official, or like the non-official, whatever. It's the spiritual successor to NBA Jam. So yeah, I guess, and then they went on, I think Acclaim went on to make NBA Jam Extreme or something, and supposedly it wasn't as good as this one. So if you like the NBA Jam games where it's like over the top, you know, basketball, kind of like, you know, NFL Blitz and stuff like that, you will like this game. It's full 3D, so yeah, I love that series. It's pretty much the only kind of sports series I like, so cool to find that at Goodwill. Then I found this at Goodwill as well. Speaking of over-the-top Midway sports games, NFL Blitz, the original NFL Blitz. I'm not sure which version is better though, this or the N64 version. But yeah, I picked it up. It's still fun either way. There's a couple of later iterations which might have more features, but this is the one I remember the most. So it's cool to have. It's basically, you know, football with over-the-top brutality and, you know, crazy stuff like the ball starting on fire and stuff like that. One I need to get still is the Wayne Gretzky's 3D Hockey, which is also by Midway, and it's basically NBA Jam or NFL Blitz in hockey. So I still need to pick that up on N64. Anyways, then we got this game, Nuclear Strike, which is from the long-running Strike series from EA. This is I believe the last game they made. And it's, you know, helicopter and other vehicles in this one. The earlier games was only helicopter piloting. But yeah, you can switch to ground vehicles and other types of helicopters, which is cool. Has full motion video for the story, so live action. So that's always cheesy. It's top-down, isometric, you know, arcadey vehicle combat. So this is really awesome. I highly recommend it. And I believe the people that made this, some of them moved on to making the Mercenaries series on Xbox Original and PS2, and then Mercenaries 2 on 360 and PS3. So you can see similarities with this game and the Mercenaries games. Okay, next up we got good classic, Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey. And luckily I got the original Black Label one. So this is a 2D platformer, kind of puzzle solving, lots of instant deaths, Prince of Persia style game. So yeah, it's got the comical kind of weird otherworldly setting. So, and this got remade new and tasty on I believe it was PS4, maybe PS3 and PC, and yeah, it's a good remake. And pretty soon they're going to release a remake of this next one, Oddworld Abe's Exodus. I keep forgetting the titles, but yeah, hopefully the remake of this one gets a physical copy. You had to order from Limited Run Games to get the first game's remake on a physical disc. So hopefully the remake of this will have a physical disc as well. And this one's 2 discs. They used a lot of full motion video for the backgrounds, so naturally that takes up a lot of space. So yeah, 2 discs. Pretty cool sequel. Alright, next up we got a action RPG horror game called Parasite Eve by Square. And this came out after Final Fantasy VII, so I remember at the time I was obsessed with Final Fantasy VII, so when I heard this was using the same graphics engine as Final Fantasy VII, I wanted, you know, more. So yeah, it's cool. It's basically like Resident Evil meets Final Fantasy. Kind of short, but pretty memorable game. Nice cutscenes and everything, so it's highly recommended. And then I of course have this game, Parasite Eve 2, the sequel. I think this one went a little more action-y, but I haven't played too far into it yet. But yeah, it's just kind of more of the same though. A lot more gun customization though, if I remember correctly. But I definitely need to beat this one as well. So let's just keep it going. I have a lot of games to get through. This one I found at Goodwill as well, Point Blank. It's a gun-con light gun shooter. This is just kind of comical with a lot of mini games, so it's more like a shooting gallery type game. So that was cool to find. I wanted this for a while, but I never really wanted to pay full price, so finding it for, you know, $3 at Goodwill is always good. And here's another light gun shooter, Project Horned Owl. Now, I believe I got this from eBay along with the Konami Justifier, which it uses. But it's basically kind of a futuristic light gun shooter, 2D sprites. It's you know, futuristic with you're fighting robots and stuff, so that's kind of interesting. There's another one, I forget, it's made by Working Designs, and it's another light gun shooter that I need, but it costs a little more. I think Elemental Gearbolt, I believe it's called. I might be wrong, but yeah, I'm glad I got this one though. It's a cool game. Always like light gun shooters. Alright, here's a nice port of R-Type 1 and 2 called R-Types. So it's just basically straight arcade ports of those games. Yeah, I can't remember if this was kind of pricey. It might have been like $30 or $40, but I can see this collection going up in price. But yeah, not much to say. It's arcade perfect port of the 2D shoot 'em up series. And then this one I heard is going up in price. I got it really cheap, like $30 or $40 like years ago. That's R-Type Delta. I think it's basically the 4th game. And yeah, I got it for $30 to $40, and now I think it's worth like $90 to $100 or maybe more. I'm not sure. But yeah, it was, I can't remember if it was brand new, but the disc is mint condition, so lucky that I ordered this when I did. So very awesome game. This is when the series finally switched to a 3D graphics engine, but still 2D gameplay, obviously. Very, very hard game. Have not beaten it yet because it's so hard. And then getting into the Resident Evil series. So I got the Resident Evil Director's Cut DualShock Edition. So this is the one with the really crappy music, which is kind of funny in some ways, but I would like to get the original long box version of Resident Evil 1, just because it has the original music and I like long boxes. Or you can get the original Director's Cut that isn't DualShock compatible, and that one has the original music as well. But yeah, it's the horror classic that started the series off. So cheesy nowadays with the voice acting, but still fun gameplay. I do have Resident Evil 1 for Sega Saturn though, which has the original music, so there's that at least. But yeah, the Director's Cut DualShock Edition has a lot of cool extras though. It has like a ranged mode where you have different camera angles and different enemy placements. It has different costumes and not sure what else, but anyways. And I also have Resident Evil 2, the DualShock Edition as well, which adds the battle mode to the game. You can play as Chris Redfield from Resident Evil 1 in the battle mode. I actually did have the original Resident Evil 2 release, just the original with the like the thicker box, but this one is just like a thin jewel case with the flip open 2-disc thing. But yeah, it's a good version. I've also got this on GameCube. I have all the Resident Evil games for GameCube, but yeah, still a good version. And then of course I have this Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, and you can see it has the Dino Crisis demo inside, which I remember I bought this back in the day. There's the Dino Crisis demo. So yeah, this was one I got at launch. I didn't get a lot of PS1 games back in the day at launch, but this one I actually did pre-order at Toys R Us. So yeah, it's really good. It's kind of more the same of Resident Evil 2, just more action-y and one character instead of 2 different campaigns. But yeah, the Nemesis is a monster that chases you all throughout the game. You fight him several times and he you know, mutates through the game and gets stronger. So it's a very tense game. It's very cool. It's not quite as slow-paced, but the action is very awesome. And then here's a game that's kind of unfortunate with the US release, Resident Evil Survivor. It's called Gun Survivor in Japan and Europe. And they just changed it to Survivor in the US because right before it came out, the Columbine shooting happened. So they started demonizing any games with gun violence in them, especially light gun games, because you're simulating real shooting with a light gun. So they removed the fucking gun con support, which really hurt this game. It's not as good without the gun con. It's still somewhat fun, but yeah, it's a light gun shooter, but you're able to move around a bit, so it's not on rails, and it has some of the adventure elements of Resident Evil. But yeah, it definitely hurt the quality of the game by not having gun con support, but I wanted to have it because it's considered canon to the storyline, so yeah. Alright, next up we have this game, Riven, the sequel to Myst, so it's the second Myst game. And this one's pretty massive. It's 5 discs, I believe. So you got 1 disc, 2 discs, and then 3, 4, and 5 discs. So I can't remember if there's any other PS1 games that are 5 discs, so this might be the only one. I think every other one is 4 discs at most. So I think the Sega Saturn version might be a little bit better, but it's so rare and expensive. I believe they balanced the colors and the contrast a little better on the Saturn version, but still, it's a decent port. And I can feel the disc coming loose. But yeah, it's just a first-person point-and-click adventure game. Famous series. Okay, got my pile going on down here. Okay, next up. I can't remember. I think I'm going in the right order. If I'm going out of alphabetical order, you'll have to forgive me for that. But the next one is Road and Track presents The Need for Speed. So this is the original Need for Speed game on a long box. And this is a port of the 3DO version, which this has a lot of differences from the 3DO version. For one, it's missing the cheesy live-action full-motion video of the rival driver that talks a bunch of smack to you. He was pretty obnoxious, but it was cheesy and funny, so a little bit of a loss, but he was a fucking douchebag, so I'm kind of glad at the same time his scenes are gone. He pissed me off when I played it on 3DO back in the day. But they did add more tracks and more cars, which is cool. But nowadays, this is a pretty outdated racer. I mean, it was innovative at the time because when this came out, the only kind of racers there were, at least on 3DO when it came out, the only kind of racers was either 2D sprite-based racers or 3D ones with really primitive, like flat shaded polygons, where this introduced textured polygons. But by the time it came to PlayStation, we had Ridge Racer as well, so it wasn't quite as special, and then Gran Turismo blew this away. But anyways, next up, another long box game, the original 32-bit Road Rash. This is the port of the 3DO version again. And I got the long box version here, which I just finally got completed by ordering the manual I needed for it. So I think I mentioned that in last pickup video, but as you can see, yes, it is complete. And this one is pretty entertaining. I mean, it has digitized actors for the sprites, and then it has live action full motion video for the little story bits, and they're pretty cheesy and funny. But yeah, I mentioned this before in the pickups video, like maybe the last pickups video or the one before that. But yeah, it's very fun. A little bit dated nowadays, but yeah, it's cool. Alright, next up, I have this game, Road Rash 3D. Now this is when the series finally went full 3D, polygon graphics. And it's fun, but it's a little rough around the edges. The collision detection is kind of wonky, but it's got a lot of variety. You can pick the gang you drive for, so that's cool. But yeah, I already mentioned this in a previous video as well, so I will just move on. And the next game I mentioned in my pickups video, that's Road Rash Jailbreak, which is kind of an expansion to Road Rash 3D. But yes, I've mentioned this before. More of the same, just a little bit more refined. Gameplay is a little bit better, but less gangs to choose from. You can only choose 2 different gangs instead of 4 like the original 3D. But still, very fun. And then we have this game, original Silent Hill, one of my favorite games of all time next to the Castlevania series and Metal Gear. This is actually another copy I got from Goodwill. Look at that price tag. What does that say? 99 cents for Silent Hill 1. It's definitely worth a lot more. So this copy was in better condition than my original. So yeah, 99 cents. Awesome. One of the best horror games ever made, in my opinion. I think I like Silent Hill 1 more than Silent Hill 2 even. Everyone loves Silent Hill 2, but this one just has the best music, in my opinion, the best mood. Silent Hill 3 is good. Silent Hill 4 is probably my least favorite of my top 4, but it's still good. But yeah, awesome, awesome game. Cool, I have 2 copies, thanks to Goodwill. And then we got this series, the original Soul Blade for PS1. And this went on to become the Soul Calibur series. But yeah, it's a Namco 3D weapons-based fighter. So not much more to say about that. And then, it's kind of an interesting game. Soul of the Samurai. So it's basically, you know, a samurai adventure, but kind of Resident Evil-like as well, with the pre-rendered backgrounds and such. And I believe it has tank controls even, but this is made by Konami, so kind of interesting. Not the best game ever. I'd say Onimusha and Way of the Samurai is much better than this. Still interesting to have though. I like samurai games. And then we have another game in the Strike series, Soviet Strike. This came out before Nuclear Strike. So in this you only get to pilot one helicopter, but it's the same kind of isometric vehicle-based combat with cheesy live-action full-motion video cutscenes. So still fun to get. But the I believe the Saturn version of this, which I have, is the best version because it has extra weapons and some other extra features. So I would go for the Saturn version if you can, but the PS1 version is still good as well. And then we have this, Star Ocean Second Story. This is obviously the second Star Ocean game. The original was on Super Nintendo in Japan only, but then 1 and 2 got ported to PSP eventually. And I believe this is on the Japanese PS4 online store. But yeah, it's a cool RPG. It's basically, you know, space travelers that land on a planet, and then it becomes a bit more like, usually the planets are kind of medieval and primitive, so you get kind of that fantasy based setting, but you're, you know, travelers from another world. The series has gone downhill lately though. Like Star Ocean 3 on PS2 was decent, and then Star Ocean 4 on Xbox 360 was awful. And then the PS3 port of Star Ocean 4 was a little bit improved, but still at the core awful game. And then Star Ocean 5, I forget, Faithlessness and Integrity, I believe it was called, on PS4, was really weak, really rushed, low budget. So it's unfortunate to see the series fall like that. But the first 2 games, well, the first 3 games are worth playing. Anyways, we're getting into some of my Star Wars games. We've got Star Wars Dark Forces. This is a port of the PC version, which is kind of like a Doom clone in the Star Wars universe, so first-person shooter. But this one did a lot of things at the time that Doom couldn't do, like looking up and down, jumping, rooms over other rooms, stuff like that. But this PS1 port is kind of bad. It didn't have dual analog controls. I think it was only a single button for strafing, so you couldn't circle strafe as a result. And you had to, I believe, press a button to look up and down as well. So it's kind of clunky nowadays. Has a lot of slowdown. But yeah, it's the first game in the kind of long-running Dark Forces series. I wish they'd make more Dark Forces games, but that'll probably never happen now that Disney is in control of Star Wars, and it's going to be forever shit at this point. Well, I guess there's a 1% chance that it won't be shit eventually, but I highly doubt that. Anyways, next up, Star Wars Episode 1 Phantom Menace. Now this came out on both PC and PS1. I started with the PC version. I believe I bought it like the same day that I watched the movie, or maybe like a couple days after. And it's pretty cool. It's like an isometric action adventure game. It's got a lot of side missions and NPC dialogue. It's kind of cool and interesting. It's almost like an RPG meets a action game. PS1 version, pretty much the same game, just worse graphics. So still, it's pretty fun to play, I'd say. I like it. It's not as good as Dark Forces or something, but... And then this game, Star Wars Masters of Teräs Käsi, which is a Star Wars fighting game. Might be the only one of its kind. But yeah, I tried to cash in on the 3D fighting craze. I was trying to be kind of like Tekken or Soul Calibur. But it's definitely clunkier and not very balanced. But it's pretty cool to have a fighting game with Star Wars characters. There was a lot of cool unlockables, including Mara Jade, which was kind of the female Jedi that trained under Palpatine in secret. So that was a nice nod to the fans. Unfortunately, we'll probably never hear from Mara Jade again, now that Disney controls the series. Blah. Okay, and then we got this Star Wars game, which I had actually had a complete playthrough of it up on my YouTube. But then I got a 6-month strike because of the Star Wars music, and we all know who's responsible for that. But yeah, it's a great game. It's an FMV rail shooter. You know, it had live action full motion videos with, you know, it's basically like a new Star Wars movie in a way, just cheesier. But yeah, it's a cool game. Okay, whew, we're almost halfway done with this part. Here's a pretty good game, Strider 2, which is actually Strider 1 and 2 on 2 discs. Kind of mentions that on the back. Not that you'll be able to read it probably. But the funny thing about this release is this disc says Strider 2. And this disc, I believe, says Strider 1. Yep. But the disc art was screwed up, so this is actually Strider 2, and this is Strider 1. So it's the Strider 1 port is nearly arcade perfect, other than load times. And Strider 2 is a cool game. It has 3D backgrounds with 2D sprites, still 2D gameplay, but the problem with Strider 2 is how unbelievably easy it was. Strider 1 was a real challenge, arcadey challenge. But yeah, Strider 2 was a disappointment. It was just way too easy. That might have been because there's unlimited credits, but I don't know. But it's a cool game. I think this copy might be getting more rare. And then they finally made a third game on PS3, PS4, Xbox, and all that, which is okay. It's more like a Metroid-style game, whereas 1 and 2 are just stage-based action games. Anyways, let's move on. Whew, these videos take forever. What am I at? Like 30 minutes right now? Here's another one I found at Goodwill, Street Skater 2. I don't have the first Street Skater, but I believe this was, yes, Electronic Arts trying to cash in on what Tony Hawk was dominating at, 3D skateboarding games. And this one I believe was a little more complex in simulation than Tony Hawk, but it just wasn't as good. But I found this at Goodwill for cheap, so have it for collection's sake. Alright, let's see, I guess I'm at this pile here. I got about 4 more piles here. But great series, Siphon Filter, here's the first game. Over the shoulder, you know, stealth, action, shooter. Very cool series. I hope it comes back one day. And one of the best memories of this game is, of course, using the taser on enemies. And the longer you tase them, they'll start smoking and then burst into flames. So that was pretty sadistic. I believe, like in the later games, maybe the last game on PSP, they removed the ability to tase them until they started on fire, because This was always a mature rated series, although this one's teen. The other ones are mature rated, but they had nice blood effects on the bodies where you'd shoot them. You'd see like blood stains, and yeah, it's basically a lock-on style shooter, but very fun. Cool storyline. Cheesy, but cool. Okay, next up, of course, have the sequel, Siphon Filter 2. I guess it didn't have a subtitle, but there's the back, and this one was a 2-disc game, so I believe it probably had more cutscenes and more missions. Oh yeah, I think you could play as the second character, the female character, Ming, or something like that, or what was her name? Lian Xing, that was it. But yeah, I think that's why it was 2 discs. Yeah, it looks like she's on the artwork for the second disc. So yeah, that was kind of cool. I believe a lot of the missions in this were more trial and error based, where you could instantly fail when you were spotted, which got kind of annoying in my opinion. But still, a good game. I'd recommend it. And then, of course, we got Siphon Filter 3. So, again, I can't remember. See, this has a big case, even though the second disc area is just empty. But yeah, this is a 1-disc game, as you can see. More of the same, pretty much. I actually have not beat this one yet. I played it back in the day. I rented it, but I don't think I beat it back then either. But yeah, just more of the same. The funny thing about this is they changed this front cover art because this was coming out, I believe, right after 9/11 happened. And I believe the art was just like the character standing there with the American flag in the background and an explosion. So I guess they decided to change the cover just because there was an American flag with an explosion, which seems kind of dumb in my opinion, but whatever. Now it has generic CG character art on the front. But yeah, cool series. Alright, next up, RPG series. This is I believe the second game in the series. Tales of Destiny. The original was Tales of Fantasia on Super Nintendo in Japan only, till it got ported later. But yeah, this was the first PS1 game, I'm pretty sure. Completely sprite-based backgrounds and characters, action-based combat, kind of like a 2D fighter almost. Very anime, but cool series. The series kind of went to shit in my opinion though. It's just not as good as these old games. Which of course I also have this one, which I believe is getting a little bit more rare nowadays. I think I paid $50 for this, Tales of Destiny 2. Although this is not the correct title. They changed it to Tales of Destiny 2 when it was called Tales of Eternia in Japan, because there's an actual Tales of Destiny 2 on PS2, I believe. So this is actually not a real sequel to Tales of Destiny, but they just thought us Americans were stupid and needed a number at the end of it, even though it's Tales of Eternia. But this is a 2-disc game. Got some nice, anime-style cutscenes, which is cool. Same kind of, sprite-based game with, fighting game-style combat. But the combat has changed a lot over the years with the new games. This is straight up like a 2D plane that you move on, where the newer games let you move all around in 3D. But yeah, this is, I think, getting more rare, so I'm glad I picked it up for like $40 or whatever a couple of years ago. Okay, here's another Goodwill pickup. One of the only other sports games I like. Tecmo Super Bowl for PS1. I played a lot of Tecmo Bowl and Tecmo Super Bowl on NES. And this has been ported to so many systems, well, new games anyways. So this is by Tecmo, Ninja Gaiden people. And yeah, it's kind of over the top. I mean, it's not super realistic, but yeah, it's a cool series. I'm sure a lot of people have memories of that on NES. Okay, then we got this game, Tekken, the first in the Tekken series. And it's just the greatest hits copy, 3D fighting game. with a kind of cool storyline to it. Lots of cool CG endings. And then of course I got Tekken 2, also greatest hits. More characters, kind of more of the same. This is the same graphics engine as part 1, just a little bit improved. And then this is when it really started to get serious. Tekken 3 is when the series could actually compete with the Virtua Fighter series. Had a lot more depth, way better graphics, more characters. So yes, this is one of the best games. And it continued the crazy story with the, the CG endings. And then this, I did a Let's Play on my YouTube channel, a full Let's Play. Tenchu Stealth Assassins, the Tenchu game that started it all. Pretty clunky nowadays, but really gory, fun stealth kills to do. A lot of cool ninja items to play with. Okay, and then of course I have Tenchu 2, Birth of the Stealth Assassins, which is a prequel to the first. So he plays younger versions of the ninjas. So yes, I think I played some of this on my YouTube channel, but not the full thing. A lot of improvements, a lot of things that weren't as good in that game. But let's just keep it moving. I want to get through this. Okay, this game, the X-Files game. So this is another point-and-click first-person adventure game. It has new scenes shot by Krist, I'm pretty sure. Oh, the story was created by Krist. I don't know if he directed it. But, Mulder and Scully show up a few times in it, but it's mostly new characters with some cameos by, what do they got? Well, David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson, Mitch Pileggi, which was Skinner. And there was, I think, I'm not sure if the Smoky Man was in this, but I know the black dude, Deep Throat, was in it. But yeah, it's cool. It's, point-and-click adventure game with new full-motion video. So, anyways, we're getting there. I'm getting there. Next game is Time Crisis 1, the light gun shooter by Namco that used the GunCon light gun, which was the most accurate light gun back in the day. The interesting thing about the GunCon is most guns you just point at the screen and they use a flash to, I believe a flash in like a black box, and if you, I forget how it works, but the GunCon you have to plug in another AV cable which scans the whole screen or something to make it more accurate. And it definitely, the GunCon is more accurate than other light guns. So yeah, this was a pretty good port of the arcade version. Not a lot of differences graphically, but yeah, cool series. I actually used to have the big box version with the light gun, but stupidly sold it or something back in the day. So fortunately all I have is the jewel case version now. Okay, and then we have this game, Time Crisis Project Titan, which is the second game. Yeah, it's the second game, unlike Time Crisis 2. But more of an expansion to the first game, if anything. But yeah, it's got a lot more features, more gameplay, I'd say. It's got, I think it's got like a side mode and a main mission. So yeah, it's pretty cool. These both have really cheesy voice acting, which is, of course, entertaining, as always. But next we got the Tomb Raider series. I also have this Tomb Raider 1 on Sega Saturn, but I'd say the PS1 version looks the best. There's a few graphical features in the Saturn version that look a little better, but this is probably this one has the highest resolution and I think less slowdown. So yeah, wanted to collect this whole series, and I do finally have every Tomb Raider game now. So I got Tomb Raider 2 as well, which was vastly improved graphically, I would say, over the first. A lot more variety with the gameplay. I think you could drive, yeah, you could drive a boat in this one. So, oh yeah, and a snowmobile. I think I got through most of this game back in the day from renting it, but I'm not sure if I beat it. And the same deal with this game as well. I played through most of it just from renting it, but I don't think I beat it, so I need to get back on that. Tomb Raider 3. Adventures of Lara Croft. And this tried to expand it more. It looks like she has a boat, like a paddle boat in this one. Looks like she's got some bigger boobs too. Well, her boobs were always big, but they're like hanging out there. Anyways. And now they made her basically a flat-chested Ma girl power. But yeah, this is the classic Lara Croft. Alright, next up, I believe this was a donation from my friend Giuliano. That is Tony Hawk Pro Skater on PS1. I think he gave me one of these, because I also have Tony Hawk 2 on PS1. Not the best version of these two. I believe the Dreamcast or PS2 versions have the most features. But these are the classics that started it all. And my friend Jules either gave me this one or two, but I know I found one of them at Goodwill. But yeah, kind of arcadey, you know, skateboarding games. It's all about getting big trick combos. But yeah, it's cool. Good series. Still need to get the rest of the Tony Hawk games. I think only other one I have is Tony Hawk 4 on PS2. So yeah, I still got a lot more I need to collect. They're pretty cheap though. Okay, next up, got Twisted Metal 2. And I do not have Twisted Metal 1. It's a vehicle combat game with crazy characters, kind of interesting story. Lots of destruction. But I do have the first game on the PSN version. But I'd like to get a physical copy at some point. But yeah, not much you can say about it. I also have Twisted Metal 3. Which I believe Jules sent me as well, but I had already had a copy or something, so this helped complete it or something like that. But yeah, I guess this one isn't as good as 1 and 2 or Twisted Metal Black, but still, I like any games with vehicles, and explosions are always fun. Ooh man, we're almost done. Sweet. These might be a little bit out of order here, it looks like. We'll just try my best. Vagrant Story, the Square RPG. This is by the people that did Final Fantasy Tactics. It's kind of a mix between action and strategy tactics-based game, but you play as a single character, full 3D graphics. The story and the cutscene direction was very similar to Metal Gear Solid, so it was very cinematic looking with the camera angles, but unfortunately no voice acting in this, so while the cutscenes had a lot of nice cinematic angles, then it was just text boxes that came out of them. But yeah, it's pretty deep combat system. It gets confusing a lot of the times. But I started playing it again recently, and I actually understand the combat a lot more in my older age than I did when I was a kid. So I never beat this as a kid. I got to a point where I basically couldn't proceed because I just couldn't figure out how to kill the enemies properly. But I think if I tried to get through it nowadays, I'd be able to beat it just because I've played so many in-depth games like this now. I'm better at learning the complex stat-based systems, so very cool game. Some of the best graphics on PS1 for that one. Okay, I guess this might be the next one. Long box version of the original Warhawk. So this got, I believe, 2 sequels on the PS3. One was online only, and another one, or no, I forget. Yeah, one of them was online focused, and I think the other one had more single player. But this was the original by the Twisted Metal developers. What were they called? Single Track, that's right. So, you know, the Twisted Metal developers, God of War developers, this was one of their earlier games. And it's a flight-based, kind of futuristic combat. And it has cheesy live-action full-motion video cutscenes, which are cool. But yeah, it was pretty innovative at the time. Like, you could explore these big environments and fly around, blow stuff up. So, what more can you say, really? Okay, guess we might be on this one. This one I got maybe a year or 2 ago. Wild 9. This is also by Shiny, the Earthworm Jim and MDK developers. It's basically a 2D action platformer where you use like a grabber beam to lift enemies up and like slam them down to kill them, or you can throw them in like torture devices. And you can see they kind of banked on, it says on the front, torture your enemies, although it wasn't as brutal as it sounds, but you could throw them into like grinders and flames and stuff like that. So pretty original platformer. It was pretty cheap when I bought it too, so it's cool. It's cool. Alright, and then this game, which I only have the second game of, Wild Arms 2, which is cheaper of the two to buy. I believe the first game is a little more expensive. But I haven't really played this series too much. It's kind of a, I'd say it's kind of a generic RPG in a way. But I'm sure there's some things that are original about it. I just haven't gotten around to it. I have the third game on PS2 as well. But yeah, I should try to find the first game on PS1 at some point. Who knows when. Alright, 2 more games. So, okay. Wing Commander for the price of freedom. Yep. This is, again, like Wing Commander 3, stars Mark Hamill and Malcolm McDowell. And, you know, it's by Chris Roberts, who's doing Star Citizen now, if that ever comes out, that is. And it's a port of the PC version. It's a 4-disc game, although the PC version was 6 discs, I believe. So they actually cut out a lot of the missions and cutscenes in this version. And the quality of the cutscenes was really dumbed down. But still a fun game. But I would recommend playing the DVD PC version, which I believe is on Good Old Games. So yeah, that's definitely the best way to play it, with a, you know, flight stick and everything. But PS1 version is pretty commendable considering the hardware at the time. So yeah, not much more I can say about that. Cool story. Not quite as good as Wing Commander 3. That'll always be my favorite. Alright, last game. What could be after W but X, Xenogears. So I believe this was made by some of the people that worked on Chrono Trigger. So it had a lot of similarities to Chrono Trigger at the time. I think even 1 or 2 Chrono Trigger characters made an appearance in this. But yeah, now they went on to make, after this, they made Xenosaga on PS2, and then Xenoblade Chronicles on Wii, and then Xenoblade X on Wii U, and then Xenoblade 2 coming out on Switch. But yeah, this was the original. Kind of combines, you know, traditional fantasy, Final Fantasy style RPG with, you know, Japanese mechs. And the story was really deep, like lots of religious undertones and shit like that. Very anime style, but it's awesome game, awesome game. I also have the strategy guide, which was kind of rare at the time. I don't know if it's hard to find the strategy guide for this still. But yes, it's one of my favorite RPGs for sure. And I did actually beat this one. Yes, there is some RPGs that I have beaten. Okay, so that is it for my PS1 collection. Hope you guys enjoyed. After this, I'm thinking of doing a PS2 collection video, because I do have a lot of games on PS2 as well. I'm looking at them right now. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments. And let me know if you're looking forward to a PS2 collection video. I could do an Xbox collection, Xbox 360 collection video, whatever. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Oh, and I'm wearing my Silent Hill Pyramid Head shirt for PlayStation theme, I guess. But yeah, anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Peace out.